Okay, good evening, everybody. Before I begin, the topic, as you know, is Hanoka. And if I had known 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was asked to speak what would have happened yesterday, I might have changed the title and the topic of the shir. But Baruch Hashem, I didn't know. However, I think I would be very remiss in not taking a few minutes to speak about it. I have to tell you that I moved out of the United States of America around, I think probably around 28 years ago, and something like that. And I was 27 years ago, I moved to Canada, and, I didn't have a TV, so I can't say that I really ever took time to listen to an address from the President of the United States. Yesterday, listening to everyone speaking about, you're going to hear the speech, you're not going to hear the speech. The last time I heard such excitement amongst Jews, I heard personally, about going to listen to the speech, was when Nixon resigned. I remember, I was a young boy, and everyone in my family was going home to see Nixon's address. The truth is, I was hoping that Trump's address would not last as long as Nixon's did. It's the Baruch Hashem. I remember it was a very long address. Anyway, I was just thinking, while I was watching, after I was watching, I actually saw, and just to understand the significance of this, the message from the Pope that he was very concerned that Trump should designate Yerushalayim, recognize Yerushalayim as being the capital of the Jews. And he said, you have to keep the status quo. It's kind of interesting, as I said, he was very worried about the consequences. The whole Middle East is aflame, right? And he's worried what's going to happen if Trump recognizes Yerushalayim to be the capital of Israel. And I was thinking about what my uncle, the Rav, always pointed out. I see this in his book on Kinos. And he says that for the Christians to recognize that we have Jerusalem presents a very big theological crisis for them. Because he says one of the tenets of their faith is that God rejected us because we did not accept Oso Ish. And their proof is the fact we went into exile. We were taken out of Israel. So what happens to us historically is the proof that God is angry at us and God has rejected us. So he pointed out in 1948, they had a serious issue because we came back to Eretz Israel with establishing the state of Israel. There was a simple answer. The simple answer was, well, we don't have Jerusalem. Then we had Jerusalem in 1967. That was a very big problem. And therefore, their policy was always that Jerusalem should be an international city. Because when the Jews have Jerusalem in the eyes of the world, that means another proof that we are God's chosen people. And I was thinking about the pasuk of in Tehillim, Zechor Hashem. He says, "Le'adam Yom Yerushalayim Amru Arad Yisod Ba." We ask Kadosh Baruch to remember the children of Edom. Children of Edom might be the Christians who are an outshoot of Edom, when they said to destroy Yerushalayim until the foundation. So it couldn't be physically destroy or also emotionally take away from us. And any time the nations of the world recognize Yerushalayim as our capital, it's a very, very, very significant. And we have to see the Yad Hashem in everything. As we're coming closer and closer. Kadosh Baruch Hu is pulling the strings to bring the Gula Shlema to complete redemption. Okay, now on to Hanukkah. All right, so now I want to speak about So I want to speak about a mitzvah, the mitzvah Adlakas Neros Hanukkah, lighting the Neros Hanukkah, the candles of Hanukkah. Now, it's generally accepted, as I'll speak about, that if you ask, what is the mitzvah of Hanukkah? Is the mitzvah of Hanukkah the menorah, lighting the menorah? Or is the mitzvah placing the menorah, it should be placed in the right spot? And in general, as we'll see the sugya, what's accepted is hadlaka osa mitzvah. That the mitzvah is not where you place it. The mitzvah is where you light the menorah. And for that, one of the proofs the Gemara brings is because the bracha we make is Asher Kedeshanu Savit Sivanu Lahadlik Ner Shal Chanukah. That being said, I would like to show in the shir that not only is, even though the hadlaka is the mitzvah, but the place where it's kept and what happens after the hadlaka, the lighting, is extremely important. So let's begin with the sugya. Now the sugya actually is a big machlokas rishonim. Just because of time and complexity, we're going to focus on one shita, which actually is mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Gemara starts on Daf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph, source number 1, and there the Gemara discusses the question, a number of arguments between Rab and Shmuel, whether you're allowed to go ahead and use one Hanukkah candle to light another Hanukkah candle. And there the Gemara says, Rav holds, Ein madlikim ner l'ner. You're not allowed to light from one candle to the other. And Shmuel says you can light. And, we can explain in a number of ways. It could be, we can talk about the fact that two people are lighting. So if my friend is lighting, can I use his light to my candle? Can I not use his light to light my candle? And then the Gemara discusses other arguments which are not really relevant to Hanukkah. The Machlokas Rav and Shmuel. And even though in general, when we have a halacha that does not involve monetary manners, we always paskin like Rav. If you look at source number 1, this is the Gemara in Shabbos, Tav Chaf Beis and Aleph. So he says, I'll take it back before we get there. The end of the second line. So what is the Svaras HaMachlokes? Yosef Ahumar Rabbanan Kamed Rav Ada Barava. So one of the rabbis is sitting for Rav Ada Barava, but Yosef Kamar, and he said, Taima de Rav Mishum Bizui Mitzvah. One of the reasons the Rav holds that why is it a problem to use one candle of Hanukkah, another candle? It's Bizui Mitzvah. It's denigrating the honor due to this mitzvah. You're using one candle, light another candle. So therefore Rav says you can't light, and Shmuel says no. Shmuel says, we're not worried about Bizui Mitzvah. Obviously, since you're using one to light another, it's not Bizui Mitzvah. So then, Amar Lahu. So then, Rav Ada Barava said, don't listen to him. Lo Tetzitzi Lahu. Time with the Rav. The reason of Rav is Mishum de Kamakish Mitzvah. He says that you're going ahead and you're taking away from the original mitzvah. If you go ahead and light one candle from another, you're removing something from the first candle. So you look at source number 2, the Ritva actually discusses what's going on. He asks, what are you taking away? You light one candle from another, the original candle stays the same. So the Ritva says in source number 2, time of the ray, he says, even though the first flame, Harei Kubakocha, it's still in its original strength, like it was before you use it to light another candle. Because one candle, as we know, can light many candles, and there's no end to it. However, it seems like when you go and put one candle to the other, it seems like you're taking away from the first candle. And then he goes on and he says, Valderech emes, I did not try to investigate this scientifically. He says, Chasar no siba, you are taking something away, but you just don't realize it. But he says, but the Ritva points out that you're taking away something from the first candle. So the Gemara asks, so, okay, very nice. We have two svaras, why Rav says it's usher, why Shmuel says it's mutter. Rav holds it's usher because it's by using one candle like another, you're mevaze, you denigrate the mitzvah. And the other svara is because you're taking away from the candle. Is there a difference in the two reasons? So the Gemara says, yes, there's a difference. What's the difference? So he says, when Rav says it's usher, is Rav saying it's usher to light one candle directly to the other candle, right? Or is he only saying it's usher, let's say, for example, to take a match, light a match on one menorah, and then use that match to light another menorah? So the Gemara says, if you hold that it's because of bizui mitzvah, that we're afraid you're denigrating the mitzvah, then obviously Rav is not saying that it's a problem to light one candle directly to the other candle. Right? You're lighting one Hanukkah candle to another Hanukkah candle. He says you're not denigrating the mitzvah because you're only dealing with Hanukkah candles. But however, what is he saying is the problem? The problem is that you can't take a match to light one candle, light another candle, because taking a match would be mevaz to denigrate the Hanukkah light. He said, but if you say the reason is because of a chushe mitzvah, you're somehow or another taking away from the first Hanukkah candle, and that wouldn't be right. Okay, so that's Gemara tries to prove. So then the Gemara brings many rayas one way or the other, and the Gemara finishes off. Not just finish off. The Gemara brings a raya from the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, and we'll have to come back to this a little bit later, but I want to focus on this now in terms of the raya. So the Gemara in source number 3, and Daf Chaf Beis and Beis, discusses the menorah, and we know that you had to light the menorah outside the paroches of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the Gemara asked the famous question: What do we need a menorah in the Beis HaMikdash for? V'chila orahu tzarech? You don't need the light in the Beis HaMikdash. After all 40 years in the Midbar, the Jews had the Anan, the cloud was giving them light. And they had a menorah in the Mishkan, in the Midbar, in the desert. So what was the purpose of the menorah? So the Gemara says, he says that the menorah is edus, is testimony to the world, that what? That the Shechina is Shora b'Yisrael. The menorah is testimony to the world that the Shechina, that God's presence is with us. How is it testimony to the world? Because it says there's the Ner Maravi, one of the candles, the machlokas, which one it is, and he says you put the same amount of oil in every single cup, and the Ner Maravi is the one which you light first, and it's the one which you finish off with, and it still lasts the same amount. It still lasts even though it's lit longer than the other candles. Okay, so then the Gemara and he says, and what do you do with the Ner Maravi? You light the other candles of the menorah with this Ner Maravi. So now the Gemara asks the question. The Gemara says, hold on a second. We're assuming that the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash is just like the menorah, the Chanukiah in the house, right? And the Gemara says that they used to light the menorah, the candles of the Beis HaMikdash, right, with Ner Maravi. So that means you're allowed to go ahead and take the candle and light one candle from the next. Since in the Beis HaMikdash lit one candle from the next, the same thing should apply to Chanukiah. So this Gemara would be a raya to who? Would be a raya to which Shita? Would be a raya to Shita of Shmuel, that you can light one candle to the next. Okay. So what do we do with Rav? So Gemara says, listen. He says, it's very simple. You could say that they went ahead and they had very long wicks. Okay, and the wicks were so long that even if the Ner Maravi was 3 candles away, you could light the other candles from it. Right? So that would say and that would how it would answer Rav. That Rav holds that potentially you could go ahead and you could light. According to Rav, you could go ahead and you would be able to light one candle from the other, right? But he said, but that would only be according to the Shita, that according to Rav, the problem is a chushay mitzvah. Remember, we said there's 2 svaras according to Rav. If you hold the problem is because of a chushay mitzvah, so that means that Rav would say. So according to it says, if you hold the problem is because of bezuye mitzvah, that you don't want to denigrate the mitzvah, so Rav is saying you can't use, let's say, a match to bring the light across, right? So then that would fit in very well, because even in the Beis HaMikdash, they never used a match. And Rav would agree that you're allowed to light one candle directly from the other. But if you hold that Rav feels you can't even light one candle directly one from another, then you have a problem. How would Rav explain the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash? And when it comes to the Chanukiah, Rav says you can't light one candle directly from the other because it looks like you're taking away. And in the Beis HaMikdash, you could. So the Gemara finishes off, and the Gemara just says very simply, kasha. It's a question on Rav. Okay, and not a tiyufta, but it's a question. All right, you get a question? Okay, fine. So then the Gemara says something very So then the Gemara says, okay, kasha. Now, how do we paskin? So we said before in source number 1, who do we paskin like? Like Shmuel. So we pass like Shmuel, it must be that you're allowed to light one candle to the other. And we just said even Rav has to agree that the problem is bezuye mitzvah, not a chushi mitzvah, right? Because if you explain the problem as a chushi mitzvah, you can't light one candle directly one from the other, then you should be able. Then how do we explain the Norah in the Beis HaMikdash? So based on this Gemara, it must be that Rav hold that the halacha is that the machlokes is whether or not we're concerned about bezuye mitzvah. Right? And therefore, Shmuel, who's not concerned with a hold, you can even use a match to light one candle to the other. Okay? So now the Gemara asks, how do we paskin? Ma havi Allah. How do we paskin? So Tosfos in source number 5 says, what do you mean, how do we paskin? It's very clear. We paskin like Shmuel, right? And therefore, you hold, you can light, you're allowed to light one candle to the other, right? And Shmuel, and the problem, machlokes is about bezuye mitzvah. Right? And therefore, according to Shmuel, you're not even concerned about bezuye mitzvah, so you can use a match in the middle. So what's the question? So Tosfos says, and there's a machlokes Rishonim about this, I'm just dealing with Tosfos, all right, today. So Tosfos says, no. Really here, we paskin like Rav. Okay, what do you mean? We paskin like Rav, but the Gemara said that that we said in the Gemara that we paskin like Shmuel in this case. He says no. He says we don't listen to this Gemara. We really paskin like Rav. Okay. So what's the issue here? Issue is like this, and let's look at Tosfos source number 5. And he says like this. He says, the middle of the last line of source number 5. So what's the question? The question is the mitzvah of Nora, all right, of Hanoka, which means, is it the mitzvah where you place it down? And therefore, if you place it down according to Rav, it's a problem. Why is it a problem? See, if you hold hadlaka osa mitzvah, right? So then, how can you say it's a problem to light one candle from the other? Because I'm doing a mitzvah with the action. But if you hold hanocha osa mitzvah, I'm not doing a mitzvah of the action. So the question is, when we light the menorah on Hanukkah, is the mitzvah where it's placed when you place it down? Or is the mitzvah where it's lit? If you hold, it's the mitzvah where you place it down. So when I'm lighting a menorah, all I'm doing is a hachana for the mitzvah. The lighting itself is not the mitzvah itself, and therefore, since the lighting itself is not the mitzvah, so I maybe in a certain sense I'm being the vaza, right? I'm going ahead and I'm denigrating the mitzvah. But if you hold that hadlakos a mitzvah, see, even Rav would hold to be okay. Why would Rav hold to be okay? Because you can't say I'm being the vaza mitzvah in the process of doing a mitzvah. So that's the machlokes hadlakos mitzvah nachamis. Let me just go through this one more time because this is very important. So basically, what Tosfos holds, and this is how we're going to. This is what the direction we're going to take is like this. Then we paskin like Rav, and Rav holds that you're not allowed to go ahead and light one candle from the other. All right? Why? Because we're afraid you might be mavazah the mitzvah. However, if you're doing it in a way which does not somehow or another denigrate the mitzvah, it's okay. So if you hold hadlaka osa mitzvah, you can't say I'm denigrating the mitzvah by going ahead and lighting one candle from the other, because I'm doing a mitzvah of a Hanukkah candle. That's a mitzvah of ner Hanukkah candle. It's not. You can't be mevaza a mitzvah with the mitzvah itself, right? But if you hold hanacha osa mitzvah, so then when I light it, that's just a preparation. That could be a bizui mitzvah. Okay, so that's the approach Tosfos takes. Now, so what are the proofs that they bring? All right, so and then we'll come back and explain. So the proofs they bring. So we look at source number 6. So the boyalu hadlaka osa mitzvah, o hanacha osa mitzvah. So Tashma, come in here. Gemara says, come in here. He says, the Amar Rava hayatafus ner Chanukah va'omed. A person is standing like the Statue of Liberty. They have the right hand, okay, and he's holding the ner Chanukah. Lo asav lo klum. What's the halacha? You're not like you didn't do anything. So shma mina. So it must be hanacha osa mitzvah. It's hanacha osa mitzvah. Why? Because if you're standing in one place, but a human being in general keeps moving, it's not called a hanacha if it's in the hand of a human being, right? So Gemara says. So we see it must be hanacha osa mitzvah. Gemara says no. Maybe hadlaka osa mitzvah, but there's a special halacha here. What's the halacha? He says the halacha is that we have to make sure people realize it's Ner Hanukkah. If I'm walking around with a Ner Hanukkah in my hand, what might people think, especially in those days? All people think? Lighting up the room. So, the Tashma, another thing, the Amar Rava, Hadlika B'thnim, you lit the candle, the menorah inside the house. You wanted to do it with the family around and sing Ma'os Tzur, and you lit it inside the house, then you take it outside the house, and then after you get outside the house, you put it in the right place outside the house. So Gemara says, so what happens? It says, lo asa klum. You didn't do anything. Very important to remember this Gemara. So what do you mean do anything? It must be because you have to light in the right place, because the hanacha, the placement is not important. The halacha is important. So Gemara says no. He says, the Gemara says at the end, the same reason. Why? Because we're afraid someone might think you only lit it for your purposes of light, and that's why you carried it outside with you. All right, so then the Gemara says, source number 7. So let's say for example, someone put a lot of oil into their Shabbos candles, all right? And then Motzei Shabbos, they come and their candles are still lit. So they figure, you know what? We'll go ahead and instead of or he says, or as a Hanukkah candle even, and instead of putting it out, right? We'll just move it, put it up and down. So the Gemara says that's not good either. He says, so why? Just pick it up, put it down. So he says. So let's look at the Gemara. So he says, source number 7. You had lights that were lit a whole day. Motzei Shabbos, mechaba madlika. You blow it out and you light it. We understand because you have to have adlaka. You just can't place it somewhere. He says, but if you say anachos mitzvah, so he says, Gemara says, what do you mean? You just blow it out and you light it again. So he says you have to mechabe umadbia manichu madlika. What does it mean? You have to go ahead and you have to blow it out, and you have to put a new candle in, right? And then you have to light it again because you have to do an hanocha. And if you just relight the candle, you're not doing a hanocha. So the Gemara says, and then the Gemara brings a raya. Since we make a bracha lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, that means hadlaka osam mitzvah. Okay. So the Gemara says, and if you hold halacha osam mitzvah, so therefore, if a cheresh, shoter, or katan lights the menorah, it's not good, no matter what I do with it afterwards, because you need the hadlaka done properly. So the Gemara finishes off, hadlaka osam mitzvah, lighting the candle is a mitzvah. That's the Gemara finishes off, and therefore we paskin like Rav. What does Rav say? You're not allowed to light you're not allowed to light miner l'ner, because we're worried about bizui mitzvah, right? But if I'm not using a match, I can light one candle directly from one to the other. How come? Because I'm not being mavaz a mitzvah. I'm doing one mitzvah in Ner Chanukah. So we pass hadlaka osam mitzvah. However, if you go ahead and look at the Shulchan Aruch, and this is what the Shulchan Aruch says. If you look at the second half of source number 8, he says, Madlikin Ner Chanukah, v'dafkad lahadlik l'nizev v'zev lo amsoy. So you light one candle from another, as long as there's nothing in between, there's no match in between. But to use a match in the middle is usher. Why? Because if you use a match in the middle, the problem is that you're being mavaz a mitzvah. But according to the Rav, since hadlaka osam mitzvah, if I go ahead and I don't use a match, I light candle to candle, and it's hadlaka osam mitzvah, I'm doing a mitzvah in Ner Chanukah that's not bizuin. It's not bizuin mitzvah. Okay, so that everything I think makes sense. However, if you look at source number 9, then we head into a problem. Okay, so let's look at source number 9. Hadlaka osam mitzvah. So this is Siman Taf Reish Ayin Hey. The hadlaka does the mitzvah. So he said below Hanoka, not the placement. Shimahoisa munachas bimkoma. That if the menorah is put in its place, shelo l'shem mitzvahs Chanukah, he says, not l'shem mitzvahs Chanukah. In other words, I put, let's say for example, in my kitchen right now, my wife's in Chutzlar, so before she went away, she's coming back, Mama Sharav Chanukah, she took all the menorahs out, all clean, polished, and they're sitting in the corner of my kitchen by the wall, by the window, right? And it was not put there l'shem mitzvahs Chanukah, it was put there, keep it out of the way. So let's say, for example, and the candles are not in, but let's say the candles would be filled up, ready with oil, and then I would come, Arab Khan, I said, wow, this is great. I don't have to move this menorah, right? Because the menorah is already in the right spot. So he says, the halacha is, he says, madlika sham, I'm able to light it there. He says, so then I would not be yotzei if I did that. Why? Because wasn't put down l'shem Chanukah. But now that hadlaka osam mitzvah, so if it turns out there's oil in this menorah, I can light it right there. And even though it was not put down l'shem mitzvahs Chanukah, it's okay. The ein tzarach l'hasir l'hanich l'shem mitzvahs Chanukah. Then he goes on. For that reason, lefichach hashosh shosh dolekes kol hayom shedlika me'erev Shabbos is Chanukah, and hashoshes that was lit a whole day, and because you lit it erev Shabbos. Lemitzvahs Chanukah. Okay, you lit it for Chanukah Friday night, and then it's still lit when Shabbos ends. Motzei Shabbos, mechava, blow it out, madlika l'shem mitzvah, and you don't have to go ahead and pick it up and put it down again. Why? Because hadlaka osam mitzvah. Umikol makom tzarich sheyadliken mach menachasa. But however, it's very important that where do you light it? Where do you light it? Place where it's supposed to be. She'im hidliga b'fnim. If you lit it inside, votzia l'chutz, took it out, lo yotze, you're not yotzei. And here, the Shulchan Aruch should say, as the Rambam says, you're not Yotzei because you lit it where? In the wrong spot. And Hadlaka is the mitzvah, and therefore it has to be written where? It has to be lit where? In the right spot. But the Shulchan Aruch says, no. The reason why it's possible, Sheroa Omer L'tzarchu Madlik. The guy is going to say, someone's going to see me and say, oh, he must lit the menorah because he needs the light. So the question is, we don't understand this. The Gemara just said halakha is the mitzvah, and therefore it has to be lit in the right spot. And along comes the Shulchan Aruch. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? The Shulchan Aruch says that you can't move it because if you move it, someone's going to say, L'tzarchahu madlika. He lit it for his own purposes. No, so in other words, I guess what happens is you have long wicks. You have long wicks. Okay, you have long wicks. You have long wicks. That's what you have to say. You have long wicks. All right. Now, obviously, it's not really done. As a matter of fact, I think the Shulchan Aruch says we don't do it today, but you have long wicks. Now, if you go on, you see there's another question also, and he says, and he goes on in the same thing. Now, according to the Rambam, by the way, if you light it one spot and move it, it's possible because of halakha is a mitzvah. All right. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, it's possible for another reason. Okay, so now, we'll try to explain this, but to point out another question, a similar question, if you go and look at source number 11, don't come back to source number 10. So we know that where do you light the Hanukkah menorah? So, manich l'mayla megivul tefachim. You have to light it more than 3 tefachim off the floor, it shouldn't be on the floor. Mitzvah lahanicha, and it's a mitzvah to put it, lamata miyut tefachim, lower than 10 tefachim. B'minicha l'mayla miyut tefachim, but if it's more than 10 tefachim off the ground, you yotzei. If you lit it more than 20 amas high, lo yatz not yotzei. He says, and then the Rama says, v'afilu lakcha kach dolak, and even if you lit it, do you have 20 amas high? V'inicha, then you put it down lamata michaf. Put it down below 20. So let's say, for example, a person lives in an apartment building, he lights his menorah, in the windowsill, and then they sing everything they sing, and takes it downstairs. Right? You're not Yotzei. The Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, because Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah. All right? The Magen Avram in source number 12 adds in, Uviyam Shel Shlomo, so Perik Vav Devavakam Farish, Hatam, the Haroa Omer L'tzarchu Nakatla. The reason is not because Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah. The reason is because if someone sees me carrying a menorah downstairs, what's he going to think? He's going to think that what? That I lit it for what reason? I lit it for my light. What do you mean? Hadlakos mitzvah. You have to light in the right. You have to light in the right place. So how do we understand that? So the Bach points out like this. The Bach says hadlaka osa mitzvah. There's no question about that. And therefore, if a cheresh shot of a katan light a menorah, halacha is in the house a cheresh shot of a katan. And let's say, for example, a katan did not reach the age of chinuch. Yeah. What? Okay, so therefore, if a cheresh shot of a katan goes ahead, and a cheresh shot of a katan will a cheresh shot someone let's say is a cheresh someone who's considered can't speak and can't hear, and a shota is somebody who is not chayv mitzvahs because he's just not lucid. All right, and a katan is obviously someone who did not reach the age. Let's say, according to all she does not reach the age of chinuch. He lights the menorah. Let's say I appoint him. Obviously in Ashkenazi houses, everyone lights, right? And, therefore we might have little children light also. But let's say, for example, in the minhag of Sephardim is one person lights. So if they appoint a cheresh the light, they're not yotzei the mitzvah. They're not yotzei the mitzvah. And even if the gadol comes and takes it, puts it down, they're not yotzei. Why not? Because hadlaka osa mitzvah. All right. So that's the hadlaka. However, because hadlaka osa mitzvah. However, the Bach says that if a person lights the menorah and he has kavana for Ner Hanukkah, he's yotzei, right? He's definitely yotzei. Only thing is, what do you got to do? You still have to do what? You have to put it where? In the right spot. And it's considered Ner Hanukkah, but you're not. But it's possible because we're afraid what people will think afterwards, right? In other words, so to be in there, if a cheresh shot of a katan light in Ner Hanukkah, it's not Ner Hanukkah because Hadlaka osa mitzvah. But if I light my menorah in my house and I have in mind that it's for Ner Hanukkah, and even though it's a place which is possible, it's more than 20 amos off the ground, it's in the house where nobody's around, and I move it, it's a Ner Hanukkah, but I'm not yotzei. Why aren't I yotzei? Because because the halacha is someone might think that it's not an Ner Chanukah l'orah hu tzarich. That is what the Bach explains. So even though we said hadlaka osa mitzvah, however, hadlaka osa mitzvah hadlaka is the mitzvah, and where you put it, okay, where you put it is also very important. But it doesn't mean that hadlaka has to be lit in the right spot. It doesn't mean that me'ikar adin. There is a special gzeira why, but it's still considered Ner Chanukah if it's in the wrong spot, as long as you go ahead and you move it to the right spot afterwards, but you're not yotze for a technical reason. Now, just coming back to the Shulchan Aruch, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch says that why is it if I light it inside, I bring it outside? The psul, it's puzzle, not because it's hadlachas mitzvah, because I did the mitzvah already. Just in order to be yotze, it has to be in the right spot. That's the reason. And if it's not in the right spot, I'm not yotze. However, I can't put it in the right spot because then it will not look like a Ner Chanukah, and it has to look like a Ner Chanukah. And that's why the Yam Shel Shlomo also says, if it's more than 20 amos high, it's a Ner Chanukah. I'm not yotze because it's in the wrong spot, but I could theoretically put it in the right spot, but someone will not realize Ner Chanukah, and that's why it's puzzle. So we see when it comes to Ner Chanukah, there is lighting it, and also to make sure that even after you light it and it's Ner Chanukah, it has to be in the right spot. Yes, I'm sorry. So I have to tell you that the shamish, okay, the shamish, you just know, the shamish was done at a time for certain reasons, okay? The first time a shamish comes up in the Gemara is at a time when they had to light inside the house, and in order to give a hecker as a Ner Chanukah, if you light outside, there's no reason to have a shamish. You light in the window, there's no reason to have a shamish. Up halacha, okay? There's no reason to have a shamish. I know, it sounds crazy. I'm saying something which he said, why? Because the whole, and even today, because the reason why you light a shamish just to light the candles. He says, I'll come back to this. However, he says, it was a shas sakana and you couldn't light the menorah in the window because whatever would happen, they would light on the table. In order to show it's Ner Chanukah, they had a shamish to show this is my shamish for my light, and the menorah is for Ner Chanukah. Okay. Now today we don't really need a shamish even in the house because what do we have in our rooms? What do we have? We have electric lights. I have to tell you. Now, however, al pi Kabbalah, there is a reason to have a shamish. I have to tell you that the solovechik family, okay, it comes from the Feinsteins actually, is known to be not sure what the word is, but they're a little concerned about danger. Okay, my father told me the story. It comes from the Feinsteins that when he was a kid, he would go visit his grandfather, Rebellia Prussian, or Rebellia Feinstein, was a Rav in Prussian, and there was a tree outside the room, and he got the biggest kick of climbing the tree and screaming from the tree, Zaidi, Zaidi, and then his grandfather would come running to him. And he showed me one time he was screaming Zaidi, Zaidi, and he fell off the tree, and he showed me his mark. So my father, when he lit the menorah, said this was his minhag with the shamish. He would light the menorah, he'd minhag the brachas, and he'd blow the candles out. Okay, so that's what I learned. And my kids come home from school, and they say, Abba, you're not using your shamish. That's terrible. You're not using the mitzvah. So the shamish, al pi Kabbalah, there's an Indian to have a shamish. I don't necessarily understand it, but there's an Indian to have a shamish. Okay, so but wherever it goes, it doesn't really make a difference. Yeah.
Sometimes in Yerushalayim, it's very windy in the early evening.
Yeah.
You didn't cover that. Extenuating circumstances. It's a tear. Say you want to light it outside.
Yeah.
But there's such a wind. Every time you're lighting it.
She lighted in the window. The Aruch HaShulchan points out that Chazal were not mechayev us to go ahead and buy glass boxes, believe it or not. The Aruch HaShulchan says that, okay? He says we're not mechayev us. And he says the reason why is because he says in Yerushalayim they didn't have a problem like they had in Nevardok in Europe, okay? But the Aruch HaShulchan didn't live in Yerushalayim, so he doesn't know. But he can light in the window, all right? That's for sure. Yeah.
If the whole idea of lighting Ner Chanukah is Pirsum Nisa.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be more logical to say that the Hanoka also mitzvah?
Yeah, so that could be, for sure, no question. But hopefully we'll explain that. But the mitzvah is definitely the hadlaka. Okay, so just Mitzvah Shem. Hopefully I'll try to explain it. We'll see. Okay, we'll see. But it could be. You're right. However, I think there's an important idea why the hadlaka is the mitzvah. I hope to get to that. Now, so Just to summarize, so we can get back to the focus of the shir. So basically, what we said is like this: hadlaka is a mitzvah. That even though hadlaka is a mitzvah, it doesn't mean, according to all opinions, as the Bach points out, that it has to be lit in the right place. It's still a ner Chanukah. It's still a ner Chanukah if it's lit in the wrong place, right? And if it wasn't for a technical reason, you actually could move it. Okay, now. Based on this Svara, we can actually understand in another halacha that even once the adlaka is over, there's still some mitzvah involved. So we hold that once you light the menorah, the mitzvah is done, right? Obviously, it has to be lit with potential to last for how long? Half an hour, let's say, half an hour. He says, what happens if I light the menorah, and then all of a sudden, it goes out? Am I obligated to relight it? No, absolutely not. And the truth is, I did the mitzvah already. However, that being said, if I did the mitzvah already, there's halacha in Shulchan Aruch, source number 19. Halacha os mitzvah, lefichach im kafsa. If it blew out before the zman passed, you don't have to light it again. And even erev Shabbos before Kabbalah Shabbos, it's not night yet. It blew out. You did the mitzvah. He says, if you look at the Ramah, but if you want to be machmer and light it again, ein levarach aleha. But the question is, what's the point? What's the point? So the answer is that even though the mitzvah is the hadlaka, but where it lasts and what it does afterwards, so it's still in ner Chanukah. Okay, once you lit it, it's still in ner Chanukah, and therefore, if you light it again, you're still having pursuing nisum of a ner Chanukah. Yeah.
I really don't want to interrupt your share of Hanoka,
Yeah.
solovechik,
Yeah.
but I think the issue today in present-day Israel for Jews
Yeah.
is not where to put the menorah or where to put this, that, there, where. But the issue is it is a pisumenis. That is important. And in relation to the current situation in Israel, I think we should not be concentrating on the halachot of Hanukkah candles, but we should be concentrating on, we should be going back to our roots, which is Torah Moshe. And not so much on the Talmud. But Talmud does say some interesting things about the present situation, yes. It does say at the end of time, we will see Klavim B'Rechavot Yerushalayim. That is also true. But I don't think Israelis are Klavim. I think we should draw them near to Judaism.
I'm sorry, but I have to. My sorry is that the Jew. No, but if we speak after the shir. I have to really get back. This is about halacha.
I want to interrupt your shir on purpose.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. But my Masorah is that we have to follow all deraisas, the Rabbanans. And the Rabbanans are deraisas also. That's my Masorah. What can I tell you?
It's not my Masorah. It's
okay.
back on inspiration on the post.
I'm sorry. Okay. This is this year. I'm sorry, but I have to deal with this. Okay. So now, the halacha, so getting back to this. Okay. So now let's step aside for a second and let's talk about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. So we did the Gemara, the menorah. We discussed the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. We saw before. It seems the Gemara implies that the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash also there's a mitzvah of hadlaka osa mitzvah. Right? Because in the Beis Hamikdash we said that you're allowed to go ahead and light one candle from the other, because if it's hadlaka osa mitzvah, right? So then it's not a bizayon to the mitzvah to light one candle from another, because you're using ner Chanukah for another mitzvah of ner Chanukah. Okay, so let's look at the Rambam. Okay, the Rambam, and I know I have my great-grandfather written here. I'm not really going to discuss my great-grandfather on this one, but if you look at the Rambam in source number 15, Hilchas Bias Migdash Perek Tes Halacha Zayin. V'chein hadlakas haneros kshera bezorim. A zar, a stranger, someone a non-Kohen, is allowed to go ahead and light the menorah. Just like a non-Kohen can shech the korban, certain korbanos, a non-Kohen can light the menorah. Lefichach im heitiv ha-Kohen es haneros. If the Kohen went ahead and prepared the neros, v'hotzian l'chutz, and took it outside the azara, so mutter lizar lahadlik. So a stray non-Kohen can light the menorah. That's the sheet of the Rambam, and the Raavad actually agrees. The Minchas Chinuch has a very hard time with this halacha. Number one, he says why? Because it sounds like the mitzvah of menorah in the Beis Hamikdash is not a mitzvah of who lights it, right? If it's a mitzvah of lighting also, so if it's a mitzvah of lighting it, how in the world can you go ahead and have somebody else light the menorah? The Minchas Chinuch asked the question. He says in source number 16, all right, said that he quotes the Yalchut Shimoni that it says Yarach haneros lifnei Hashem, that you have to set neros before Hashem. Shlo yitakim b'chutz v'yachnis. What does that mean? You can't light the menorah outside the Beis Hamikdash and then do what? Bring it back in. Now, if we look at the Al Hanisim, what do we say in Al Hanisim? Likos neros, right? V'chatros kodshecha. Okay, and many people say what it means is it doesn't mean they lit the menorah. They lit the menorah. They lit the menorah in the Chatros Kodshecha, and then they would take it back in, as the Rambam says, and the Gemara sort of implies that. So how does the Rambam deal, number one, with our Gemara, which seems to imply hadlaka osem mitzvah by the menorah, and therefore how can a stranger light the menorah? He says, and number two, we have another halacha, and halacha seems to state that you're not allowed to prepare a menorah outside and do it inside. So the Emek Dover, the Netziv, he says like this. He says that what does it mean you're not allowed to prepare the menorah outside the Beis Hamikdash and bring it and out the Mikdash and bring it and bring it inside? Lo b'hadlaka ma'iri kra. We're not talking about the hadlaka. Ela haracha lahachin nesinas hashemen b'neiros v'asiyos hapsilos v'anachasim b'neiros, but to prepare the oil and the wicks. Right? Hakol yeb ol moed v'lo b'makam acher. Everything has to be done in the whole moed and not anywhere else. But the hadlaka can be done outside. The preparation has to be done inside, and the hadlaka itself can be done outside. So the question is, it makes it sound like the hadlaka is not so important. So our Gemara seems to imply that hadlaka is important. So it could be like this. Okay, let's listen very carefully. That if the Kohen lights it, then the hadlaka is important. And then it becomes part of the avoda, right? And it's a mitzvah, and where should it be done? It should be done inside the proper place. But if the non-Kohen lights it, then the preparation is important, and then you can bring it inside. Okay. So the Rambam holds that, he says, it's a mitzvah, and you want to know something? It's a mitzvah which is Docha Shabbos, lighting the menorah. However, if it's done by a non-Kohen, then that becomes sort of a preparation, okay, the way it lasts. But if a Kohen does it, then it becomes part of the avoda, and has to be done dafka in the Beis Hamikdash, and the hadlaka is the mitzvah itself also. Now, what do we learn from all this? So I was thinking, we learn from this is like this, that, we speak about why is the mitzvah hadlaka and not the hanoka. The menorah, first of all, it's not clear, as I mentioned, I think, a number of years ago, if the mitzvah of lighting the menorah was a mitzvah that was enacted right away after the Zman of Hanukkah. From the Gemara Mesech Shabbos, you could deduce that the lighting of menorah was a mitzvah that was added later on, before the Zman of the Churban. My uncle, Yoshe Ber Solovechik, suggests that, and he says, it's quoted in the footnotes that the Avnei Nezer, the Sachachover, said the same thing. People ask me, where does the Avnei Nezer? I spent probably hours and hours looking through the Avnei Nezer Svarim. I haven't found it. So I assume the Rav heard it from somebody back in Europe. All right? But he's just, and by the way, historians suggest, if you look in Josephus, you look in the book of Maccabees, no one brings down this mitzvah lighting the menorah. Okay, what happened? Why? Because it could be, if you look at the Gemara says Hanukkah is about Halal and Al Nisan. That's what it's about. And it could be lighting a menorah. There was no reason to have a Chanukiah then, because what did the Jews have? What did the Jews have then? The menorah Beis Hamikdash. There was nothing, wasn't that important. At the time of Talmidei Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, all of a sudden, they saw the writing on the wall. They said, "Oh my gosh, we have to have some sort of remembrance," and they're masaking the menorah. But what really is the menorah? Menorah, as we said, is not to give light. It's not necessarily, number one. You're right. It is Eidos to Klal Yisrael. But we're also told that the menorah is to give light to Klal Yisrael, not the Beis Hamikdash itself. As a matter of fact, the windows were constructed in the way where the light of the Beis Hamikdash could go outside. So when we speak, and we go ahead and we speak about the menorah, as we know, is to lighten up the darkness, to somehow be an inspiration. The miracle, the Nes of Hanukkah, was a very dark time. Very dark time. There were Jews who felt it was all over at that time. There were three groups of Jews. There was one group of Jews that said, let's become Hellenists, Misyavnim. There was a second group of Jews. They said, you know what, it's all over. We lost. But it's Judaism is finished. We'll get our reward in Olam Haba. And the Maccabees, the Chashmonaim said, no. we're going to fight. And they fought and they won. They brought hope. They took the Jews out of despair, right? So the menorah represents a certain time of, going ahead and bringing light and mefarsin the nes. And mefarsin the nes is to mefarsin what it means to be God's nation. So I think the reason why Hadlaka is a mitzvah, because in order for a person to inspire people to light, you have to have Hadlaka. You have to have Hadlaka. However, a person should be very careful to realize that even though you have Hadlaka, you have to know where your Hanoka is, where you're placed. In other words, the Hadlaka might be very important, but it's very important to realize where you're placed. What do you do with the Hadlaka? What do you do with it? If you look at the last source on the page, the Gemara says in source number 20, my Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? This is actually the Gemara is talking about. Let's read the whole Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis learned, B'chafei, B'kislev, 25th of Kislev, Yom Hanukkah, the days of Hanukkah, Tam Inun. There are 8 days. The Lola Mispod Bahan, the Lola Hatzanos Bahan. You can't have eulogies, you can't fast. Why? Shekeshenichnasu Yevanim Laheichel, when the Yevanim came into the Heichel, Timu Kol Hashmonim. What did they do? They made all the oils impure. And when the Chashmonaim were victorious, and they beat them, they looked, they only found one pach of oil, one pitcher of oil, okay? And that pitcher of oil showed the Jews that God was still with them. It was only a miracle happened, and they basically made a nace of 8 days. They made a holiday, it lit for 8 days. L'shana acheres. We'll come back to this. They kavum v'asum yom tovim v'halo v'hada. Halo v'hada, that was it. The lighting of menorah, maybe it happened much later on before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. However, why l'shana acheres? Why did they wait? Why didn't they do it right then? So to those who say that, when every time there's a holiday, there's some kind of feeling, something mystical, they're waiting for that feeling. I'm a brisker, okay? I like to think of those things. I know it's Yotes Chav Kislev, but what's Hoshana Acharis? We had a miracle. But what are we going to do with that miracle? Are we going to go ahead and are we going to, move on like life is normal and not take advantage? Are we going to go back to the way it was before the whole Nes of Hanukkah, when the Jews were negligent, as the Bach points out, in their Avodas Hashem, and that's why everything centered around the Beis HaMikdash? Or are we going to take this miracle and build ourselves up and inspire people, inspire ourselves? Because if we're not going to use this miracle to build ourselves up, there's no reason to make a holiday. And that's why they waited L'Shana Acheres. They waited another year. What is another year? They wanted to see. What's the other year? Was it a year later? Was it 2 years later? I have no idea. They waited to see what the Jews would do with it. And Hadlak Osa Mitzvah, because you have to light yourself up. You have to be inspired. But the question is, what do you do with that inspiration? Where do you go afterwards? See, even though Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, Hanoka is also important. And that's why if you lit in the wrong place, really you should be able to move it according to the Bach, according to the Shulchan Aruch, according to Yam Shel Shlomo. There's a reason why you don't move it, because we're afraid that what might happen. Some might say, Tzarchu Madlik. Right? But Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, it's not just the Hadlaka. And that's why that even after you're Mekayim the mitzvah and it's done, you can relight it, because there's something about the Hanoka. The Ritva points out, when we say Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, we mean the Iker Mitzvah is the Hadlaka. And Rashi implies that also. But there's still something Hanoka where it's afterwards is very, very important. What do you do with it? But obviously, how you light yourself up is very important. And even after you light yourself up, it's important to know, and you are in their Hanukkah. You have to know that you're in the right place. And we take it to our lives also. Have to know you're in the right place, and that is a key component in Avodas Hashem. I have to tell you, my father used to always explain the pasuk. Okay, I don't know scientifically if he worked this out. He actually learned this from a conductor, he told me. He said it in the shir a few times. So, as I mentioned, the previous shir, my father was always very afraid in early years of flying. So, he used to take trains from Chicago to New York, and sometimes you have to go to the West Coast. I wasn't sure to be a scholar in residence or as an order to go ahead and to for strikes. But he once took a train to Los Angeles, to California, okay? I don't know how long it takes to go from Chicago to Los Angeles, all right? And on the way, I guess he passed by, through Arizona, the desert, right? And he sees in Arizona something you never see in Chicago. The first time I saw it was when I made Aliyah, or the first time I came to Israel, was palm trees. And he was very intrigued by palm trees. It's a desert. And the conductor said to him, the palm trees, their roots are very long and it finds water. And he used to quote this story when he explained the pasuk, Shesulim beveis Hashem, b'chatros elokeinu yafrichu. Planted in the house of God, b'chatros Hashem yafrichu. He says, why? Shesulim beveis Hashem, b'chatros, what's that right? What? So what it's doing, it was planted in the house and it flourished in the chutzner. He says, you lay your roots, that your roots can reach the Beis Hashem. Okay? So in other words, it's very important that the hadlaka is good, because the hadlaka is not good. The Hanoka is not going to mean anything. And that's why you have to make sure when you light it l'shem Hanoka. And if you lit it shlo l'shem Hanoka, and you move it, it's not good, because you have to have the hadlaka. Once you have the hadlaka, then you can do the Hanoka, right? But the ikar mitzvah is hadlaka, because without the hadlaka, you have no Hanoka. If you don't get yourself fired up, how can you inspire? How can you do something? As I mentioned the last year by Yaakov Avinu, that first he had to work on himself, and then he can go ahead and inspire the whole world. That's the idea of hadlaka and Hanoka osem mitzvah. Now, I just want to finish off with one story, I think a very beautiful story about my father, and I'll apply it to the shir, and then we'll sum things up. So my father had a stroke, and I was zoche to be in my father's shir most of the time after he had the stroke. It was a schus for me, okay? I was there for, I guess, a year I think before, and he had the stroke. And I was zoche to be able to take care of my father and learn many things from my father outside of shir.
Where was this?
In Chicago, and in New York also. And it was fascinating to watch my father as he recovered. Okay, as a matter of fact, I remember when he was beginning to learn how to walk again, he was having a hard time. My oldest son, who's now 27, I think, was learning how to walk. Or actually, I shouldn't say it, that's not true. No, my father already was walking with a cane. But he was watching my oldest son learn how to walk. And you know, how do babies learn how to walk? They stand up, they walk a few steps, and what happens? They fall down, they get up again. My father said to me, he said, it's amazing, the courage they have. If I could have that courage, I'd be able to walk normally also. But older people don't have that courage. And, it was very painful for him. Very painful. And it was very important to him, though. His learning, his davening, minyan was very important to him, extremely important to him. And no matter what, he taught us how to have a gevura. What I learned after those years was more than I learned in shir. And, there were many times, that he would walk. I remember in the airport, people tried to help him. No. I'm doing it all myself. My father was a very stubborn man, doing it all himself. And when he would walk, so he would do one of two things. My father was very systematic. Either he would sing Lakel, okay? And by the way, my father hardly sang over all the years, okay? But that's another shir, okay? Or he would go achas v'achas. I don't know if you remember that, Ray Finkelstein, okay? Yeah, that's it. Right? He would take one step achas v'achas. Remember coming to the back room in Brisk Baruch, right? Achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh, achas v'arba, and then achas v'sheva, and then he'd go over again, keep going over achas, okay? And we thought it was like, my father was keeping his mind, on what he's doing, right? At my father's levaya, one of my brothers got up and said, my father was doing the avoda of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim. Okay? And I think he taught us a lot, but he was in a different place than he was before the stroke. And when he was in shir, he was one place, and when he was working somewhere else, he was walking, he was talking to someone else. There's the hadlaka, how you fire yourself up. But that hadlaka, when you fire yourself up, the hanacha, can be in many different places, okay? So me'ikar adin, we say, we do the Hanukkah, you have to light, and you have to put it in the same place. It'll be in the same place. That's me'ikar adin. However, according to the Bach, according to Yam Shel Shlomo, he says there's a technical reason why you can't, but really, it can be in different places. There's a technical reason why you can't, because someone will say, L'tzarchu madlik. But you have to realize that the Hanocha sometimes is different. The most important thing, what makes the mitzvah is adlaka. But then you have to realize where you are. how to do the avodah. So this mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is not just the mitzvah of Persum Hanes. It's Persum Hanes for sure, and that's the Iker mitzvah. But it's also to remind us of what happened and how we were inspired and how, as we said, the Jews themselves were inspired, changed themselves. They were fired up, and then what you do with afterwards. And Hanoka, sometimes in a different spot, I told reason to tell you, sometimes you're in a different spot than where you learn. And it's very important because people have dreams and visions for themselves. Sometimes I think, is this where I wanted to be? That's not where I wanted to be. But I'm in a different spot, and I have to realize this is my avodah now, and I have to take the hadlaka that was somewhere else and somehow lighten up the world in the place where I am. That's what happened in Hanukkah, and that's what we do today. We have to fire ourselves up, and after we're fired up, look where we are, and make sure we can do the proper personation in that place according to where it is. Al pi halacha, you light, same place. However, for ourselves, the lesson is very clear. Look where you are, and sometimes it's a different place than where you light yourself up. Have a wonderful Hanukkah.